Well, Cavs fans, it was another slow start for the wine and gold, but the Cavaliers was real late as they pull out another win on the road tonight in Chicago to improve on the season to 51-10. Spence and I here to break it down for you. Everything that happens, but Spence, I think a good place to start with this one is just how every single time you think this team is like having a letdown game or they've kind of fallen asleep at the wheel, get off to a slow start. They always, it's funny. Like I'll tell you this, like a little behind the curtain here. Megs and I were doing like a Brown show during the early portion of the game. And when we ended, he was like, "Yeah, dude, Cavs are getting boat race tonight." And then he went and checked the score, and he was like, "Oh shoot, they're tied now." It was like the funniest thing ever. So like, this team just continues to amaze me in the way that they do this. We could talk about like if it's alarming at all that they get off to these slow starts, but I think a good starting place is that just yet again, you think they're out of it and boom, they end up coming out victorious yet again.
Yeah, I didn't particularly think they played very well tonight, but as you just said, closing the game on a 32-8 run in a game that was deadlocked still with 7 minutes left. I don't know what else you can say about how lethal this team is offensively. They can just pull it out of their behinds and just completely badger you to death. It's insane, man. And the adjustments they can make too are real. I think that them starting to go to Jarrett Allen in the middle of the floor really started paying off. He was finishing inside, but he was also spraying out to his teammates, with which either they would take threes or then they would drive a closeout and then another team would cut. And then from there, they were really doing damage. I think them getting to the line was really imperative to get back into this game. Donovan Mitchell did it certainly in the third quarter, getting going. Darius Garland, after a rough start, ended up finding the stroke from deep and also trying to get to the line as well. You know, we got to give a lot of credit to Javonte Green in the fourth quarter, especially the way that he just kind of upped the energy by going up and grabbing rebounds and by making these really nice passes when defenders were starting to try and defend him at the rim, where he would shovel it to Jarrett Allen for an easy finish, or he'd be ready to shoot above the break. The energy he has in transition, I think, really stood out. I thought Dean Wade was pretty good defensively too in the second half, but like you said, man, there are a lot of different things you can nitpick about this game, and we're gonna get into those because I was not particularly pleased with what I saw, and it was another slow start for the third straight game. But the way that they can just step on the gas and completely bury you is really special, man. I mean, scoring 140 on a night like this, I have no idea how they did it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable, especially without Evan Mobley, obviously, in the lineup. And this is one of the first nights, too, since the DeAndre Hunter trade that he sort of struggled. He only had the 6 points. He was in the starting lineup to start things out. But yeah, like you alluded to so many different guys, but Jarrett Allen really stepping up. I think he had like 11 points in the fourth quarter. So he sort of played a closer role for this team. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell was brilliant yet again, and Darius Garland picking up the slack. But I think it is like sort of just remarkable, even though we've talked about it so much, like how deep this team is, but to see them find different ways to win, like some key players out of the starting lineup, and it doesn't matter. Like other guys step up and make plays, and they always just find a way to come out victorious. It really is remarkable. Certainly a lot of different players that we can point to and give credit to tonight. You brought up Javonte Green. It's interesting. Like, I don't know that I thought he was going to be like a huge rotational piece when they added him to this roster, but I do feel like, Spence, you walk away from tonight feeling like he can maybe find a place in this rotation over the last 20 or so games that sets the tone for what it looks like in the playoffs, utilizing him in some way.
I think that they're going to give him a chance after seeing tonight. I don't know if he makes it into the rotation.
Yeah.
I think he's just an option, just like Sam Merrill, Isaac Okoro. They're going to be battling for that final, 9th, 10th spot. It's not easy to find time for everybody to play when it comes to the postseason. Maybe Kenny Atkinson keeps the same idea and continues to go as deep as he has during the season when the playoffs come around, but just by the way he's talking, it sounds like he wants to start increasing these minutes. Tonight's not a good example of that because they were on the first night of a back-to-back. They obviously play the Heat tomorrow night at home, but in this case, I think that they're going to give Javonte a chance to show what he's capable of and to see if he's the spark that they are looking for. I know he's been referred to as the insurance policy. I came away just watching tonight, noticing how strong he was. Just as a body getting in the way defensively, battling for rebounds. He's been referred to as a possession getter, and that's exactly what he did tonight. And then just making the smart play, knowing that he doesn't have to go outside of his comfort zone and that he's a good off-ball player, doesn't need it in his hands to be impactful on a wins. And he showed that tonight. He did a lot of good. And that was a good first showing in meaningful minutes for Javonte, I think, this evening. And hopefully we see more of it.
Let's go back to Jarrett Allen for a second because, just a couple of games removed from the Celtics game where he wasn't really part of the finishing lineup, like the final lineup to close that one out. And it was sort of disappointing because he's such an important part of this team. Kind of like a reminder from him that, like, hey, I am important. Like, I am a necessary member of this team. And when they need me, I can step up and make those plays. There was that moment towards the end of the game where he sort of had that yell, like he was screaming a little bit, like sort of pretending to get a little overhyped there. And I thought that was kind of a cool moment just to kind of symbolize the night that he had and him sort of having some fun with it. But yeah, like we sometimes forget Jarrett Allen. He flies under the radar. During the Big Three era, there was always this narrative that like it was always like a big two and then just kind of like the third wheel. Like with LeBron in Miami, it was always LeBron and D Wade, and then Bosh was kind of the third wheel. And then even in Cleveland here, like it was like LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love was the third wheel. But like with this core four, I think JA is the guy that probably gets the least amount of attention at times. I think it's nice to see games like this where he has a big performance and it just reminds us that like, no, this is like four core guys that really are important and they all can do different things and play different roles and they can all step up at different times to help the Cavs win games. And that's kind of been the story. I think this recent stretch where guys have been injured too. You didn't have DG for a couple games last week and they found ways to win. You didn't have Evan tonight. You didn't have Donovan the other day. And it was like different guys kind of finding where they needed to sort of come in and make plays to get this team over the top.
That's why it's called a team, It's just like, it's not individuals out there doing this. And I think that Jarrett's role this year has been much scaled back. He's doing the little things. He's doing the cleanup duty, grabbing the boards, setting the picks, and making sure that he's playing defense. So he's not had the usage that he's had in past years. Yeah. Tonight, you saw the two-man game with Max Strus. It was beautiful. You got the ball to Allen in motion to where he was really showing his finesse and his footwork tonight with the layups. Did you see the jelly and the finger rolls he had going on? That was fun to watch. It just shows you that he is still a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. It's just that he's not in the role that we're used to seeing him here in Cleveland because Evan Mobley has stepped up into that primary scorer, playmaker type of role. And Jarrett is just as capable. It's just that on this particular team, he's not being asked to do that stuff. And I think that we have to remember that too as sports fans. With team sport, you're asked to sacrifice. And Jarrett has been the number one case of doing that this year, I think. And he deserves a lot of the love. And I think, too, a lot of people don't respect enough that he's trying to play all 82 games. And so far, so good, knock on wood. He has done so, and he's continuing to bring it each and every night. He gets fatigued. Kenny Atkinson makes that pretty clear. Like, he does not have the energy sustained throughout the season, but he's still going out there and being a good soldier. I think that he deserves a lot of credit. Obviously, he can be better on some nights, but for the most part, he's been pretty damn consistent for being a 12-10 guy. I always feel like no matter what game passes by, that's what he has at the end of the day. Tonight, he goes out and gets 25-17, a couple of steals. Like, he is very underappreciated, and I think that people got to look in the mirror and understand the game of basketball, that there's only one to go around.
Yeah, he's definitely been super unselfish. This whole team's been unselfish.
Yes.
But certainly if you forgot about Jarrett Allen and his importance to this team, he reminded you tonight. Also, unindoctrinated. I kind of like it's a funny nickname on in the comment section here. He says JA hit 7,000 points. Mitchell hits 13,000 points tonight. So sort of two cool milestones for those two guys, which is notable, obviously. Spence, it's funny. Every time we talk about the rotations and how deep Kenny Atkinson can really take this thing in the playoffs, I sort of go back to, can he really go to 10? Can he really get to 10 deep in the postseason? And then every time I think that he can't, this team, does what they did tonight, and you see performances from Sam Merrill, who's like, hey, I still want some say in this. You see performances from Javonte Green, like we talked about. You see performances from even somebody like Isaac Okoro, who had a lesser role in this game, still played 20 minutes. He scored 4 points. He was 2 of 4 from the floor, made a couple solid plays. Like you keep, every time I think that someone's going to have to get like axed out of the rotation here, all these guys sort of find themselves making plays that feel like, okay, maybe they are still part of this rotation. So I just think that's kind of an interesting part of all this. Like, we're seeing that depth still play out. And I'm starting now sort of had to walk back my thought that there's no way Kenny Atkinson can go 10 deep in the playoffs. It looks like all these guys are kind of earning in those spots when it comes playoff time.
I agree with Pale White Dot, by the way. Thank you for the comment. Very timely threes on Sam
Merrill's
Merrill's part. Good contest on the 3-2 on the outside before the end of the third quarter. Unfortunately, was called for a foul, but the review went to it, saw it was clean, got it back. He's been doing so much yeoman work on the defensive end that he also deserves a ton of credit. And this goes back to it, man. Like, you can go down the list on the box score, down the list on this roster, and find positive contributions from everyone. This wasn't DeAndre Hunter's best game, but you know what he did? He went out and grabbed 5 boards. Yeah. He's not somebody that goes out and gets rebounds too much over the course of his career, but he found a way to do that, get some defensive boards, make an impact with a block. Like, it's somebody different every night, and that's what's so nice about the Cavs is that if someone isn't having their best shooting night, or if they're not having their best night overall, then someone's going to be there to pick them up. And that's exactly what, again, team basketball is all about. And I feel like at 51-10, you can probably say that the Cavs are pretty connected and have a lot of good players. Just because one's not having a good night doesn't mean that he's a bad player. I feel like that happens a lot. And in the case of Jarrett Allen, I can see that in my mentions a ton. Like, what is JA doing? Blah, blah, blah. Like, no, he's still doing a good job of what he's being asked. And, we can go up and down, Ty Jerome. How many times are we going to spend time on Ty Jerome? Kind of resuscitated the Cavs again tonight when they were down by 15, 16 points. Gave him that initial
whenever we
bump.
talk about Ty Jerome, I just want to yawn,
here we go
just
again.
just another Ty Jerome night. Like, it's just so ho-hum at this point. You just kind of expect him to go out and drop 20 every night, and you're like, oh yeah, he dropped 20 again. No big deal. Like, but it is, that's part of Ty Jerome's story though, right? Is like the fact that this guy at the beginning of the season went from a role player to now a guy that we expect every night is going to make important plays and score a lot of points for this team to help them in a win. Like, it's just funny how that arc is kind of transformed. And that's the same thing that Kenny Atkinson said. Like, he's joked a dozen times at least about how they kept thinking there's no way he can keep this up. There's no way he can keep this up. But he's just continued to maintain it. It's been remarkable. I don't know if there's anything left for us to say about Ty Jerome at this point.
No, it's really hard. That's why I tried to go with a defensive angle the other night, and that's when they gave me a lot of funny stuff. If you're going to look at my Twitter page where DeAndre Hunter and Max Strus are having a lot of fun with him on the defensive end, having some jabs here and there. But yeah, no, he has been consistent. He has been the Energizer Bunny and given them a ton of boost and juice off of the bench. And, and speaking of Strus, by the way, I thought he had a pretty decent game tonight too. As far as being a playmaker goes, I told you, him and Allen in the 2-man game was really, really solid. Donovan Mitchell, here's a point that I wanted to hit on as I was watching this game. Are you noticing that Donovan's trying to dunk more and more over the last couple of weeks? He's trying to show you that his knees are fine.
I don't know that I've thought about that a ton, but now that you bring it up, I can recall numerous times where he's really tried to give us a LeBron level dunk that he's just trying to bring the house down with.
It looks purposeful.
Yeah.
It looks purposeful. And I think that, a lot of people were concerned because coming off of the Celtics series, and then his finishing rate at the rim was not quite where it's been in the past. And, is that a sign of something injury related? Is that just because he's doing some different things offensively? I think that you're quietly seeing as we go along that Don's just fine. It was a vertical leap 2-hand jam after grabbing his own rebound tonight that he had. So I think after seeing that and also seeing him try to dunk while fading to the left out of bounds with the right hand over somebody and drawing a foul, he got to the line 14 times tonight, by the way. So that was really good to see. And he's been getting to the charity stripe more and more. So he's more in attack mode, getting into the paint and doing that stuff and taking initiative himself. So I think that we can assume that he's pretty all right there.
So, Spence, whenever we see these games where the Cavs start slow and they mount a comeback, we tend to focus because we're two positive-minded individuals.
Yes, please, let's nitpick. I got it all.
We see the glass half full perspective. That's what we do. So we tend to lean more on like hey, what a great comeback. This team's never out of it. Like they're so resilient, blah, blah, blah. And those things can be true. I'm not trying to downplay the fact that can be factual about this team. They can be a team that no matter what the score is, they're never out of it. I buy that. But on the flip side of that, Spence, several games now where you've seen them get off to these slow starts. I know injuries have been part of that. There haven't been guys in the lineup. Donovan missed a game. Darius missed a couple games last week. But is it concerning for you at all at this point that they're now sort of making a trend out of getting off to these slow starts? Is this part of just the natural course of the regular season where it's like, okay, maybe this team's more ready for the playoffs at this point. Maybe we're ready for the playoffs at this point. And so it takes some kind of getting into it with these games. Or is this pointing to a larger issue, you think, on the Cavs front?
I think you would have to extend to like 7 to 8 games for me to be like, something's happening here. Chicago is a really fast team. They're also a team that gets a ton of threes off. So I feel like that plays into it. I also thought that defensively, they just were not guarding their yard whatsoever. The fact that I saw Taylor and Horton Tucker just get to the line and get to the cup at will with like little resistance was off-putting for me. That's somebody who I respect a ton because he's continuing to grind throughout this season. But, he has not been a rotational player consistently throughout his career. And, that is, you can't just give up straight line drives from Taylor Horton Tucker. Like, you can't do that. You have to be more prideful on the defensive end and make sure that you're staying in front, you're sliding your feet. Defense was the big issue for me in that first half. Sometimes it's rebounding, but they always correct the rebounding at half. Yeah. I never have any, issues with that once they get it into gear. But I would say defensively there, and then offensively, you see some settling here or there, but I don't know if you can settle if you're a Cavalier because everyone can make shots and everything's a good shot, even if it's contested at this point. They weren't quite moving the ball as much as they had been, and there was some ISO, there was some go and get my own, see what happens type of offense tonight. But again, I don't know how much you can criticize that, and I'm not worried one iota about the Cavs' offense. Defense, maybe individually you get a little bit like, you got to do a better job. You got to lock in more. I think tonight they just weren't locked in from the jump because maybe they were sleepwalking into a game against a team that was down 4 or 5 guys and is young and is still kind of a brand new team to each other with some of the new pieces they brought in. Trey Jones, Zach Collins, Julian Phillips coming off the bench. They haven't really been playing all year together. So maybe the Cavs kind of thought, And that hasn't happened much. They're a very mature team usually. Tonight, maybe a little bit different. Same against Portland on Sunday. Maybe a little bit different, kind of like that. The problem I had, though, is that Chicago is not nearly as tall nor as strong as Portland was. Like, at least with Portland, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, they're moving bodies. Like, no, Chicago was just getting what they wanted in that first half, and that didn't really sit well with me. But, again, like, these are rich people problems. It is. It's true. Like, you look at the Buck, you end up winning by 22 in a game that was tied with 7 minutes left. So, like, yeah, you don't want to build bad habits, is what I'm saying. And I don't think they will. I think that Donovan is going to have something to say about that tonight in the locker room, if I had to guess. We're going to ask Kenny about it pregame tomorrow when they face a Heat team that you absolutely can't get off to that kind of start against because they will suffocate you to death defensively. So, I don't see it as a huge problem. It would have to extend to like 7-8 games for me.
I do think we can chalk it up to a small sample size at this point. We'll see if it continues to be an issue, obviously, for this team. But hey, when you score 43 points in the fourth quarter and just, get the Avalanche effect and really boat race them, obviously that gets you back in the game, gives you a chance to win. We're at over 1,000 viewers live in real time, which is awesome. Kenny has a secret Avalanche button under his bench. I like that. Yeah. which whenever he needs his team to sort of step their game up a little bit. Spence, we always like to get out of here because you're critical, you're tactful eye for basketball. Is there anybody we missed? Anybody we didn't hit on during this conversation that you think deserves a little bit of love?
I thought Dean had a good game tonight. I thought he was really solid at moving and obviously defensively doing Dean Wade things, man. Like, he got switched on to guards quite a few times tonight, kept up, stayed in front, especially in the second half, like I said. Deflections, forcing passes that the Bulls didn't want to make. And then obviously, making an impact, grabbing 4 boards. You see a 2-of-7 game, but the fact that he took 7 threes is a good thing too. I always love to see the 3-point attempts up like that. And I think you're going to see Darius Garland did not have his best night. But again, going back to that other game where he was not shooting very well, and as you brought up, still made an impact as a playmaker and doing his thing. Like, the fact that DG is not giving up after he misses a few shots is a good sign to me, because that means that he's not shying away from the moment. Some of those floaters, he gets those looks all the time, and most of the time he buries them. Tonight, he was short-arming them, and then he was going back iron. But he kept at it, and he made a couple before the end of the half, ended up getting some threes to drop, and then, closed the half on some good momentum. And then, made some timely ones too in the fourth quarter in his last shift. So I think that's always good to see that the confidence continues. He led the Cavs in shot attempts tonight. But he definitely didn't have the most makes. So I think the aggressive mindset is a good thing, even if it doesn't look as efficient. But I mean, for the most part, you're taking care of the ball other than the first quarter. Did a solid job there too. So I think we pretty much covered all angles here. If anyone's got any last minute questions, I'll be more than happy to ask. Me and Megs did that last post-game show, and I really enjoyed it. So
throw in your questions if you have them, while I kind of give you the logistics of this show and this channel, because we always do these things at the end. We encourage you to head on over to Cleveland Cavaliers on SI or SI.com/NBA/Cavaliers. See any of our written content from tonight's game or just from the Cavs in general, and follow along with the team there throughout the season. Also, stay in tune at this channel right here. If you're watching on YouTube, I know some of you might be watching on Twitter, but if you're watching on YouTube, Spence and I, also, Anthony does a tremendous job with us as well, jumping in on these post-game conversations. Spence and I obviously have the pod as well, Courtside with the Cavs on SI. Which I'm assuming we're going to do an episode later this week after we get these back to back. Yeah, we got to get through this whirlwind of a couple of days. We'll have a new episode for you over there, and I actually have a really fun topic to discuss with you, Spence, about whether or not the Cavs are a sexy team if they win the championship. So we'll talk about those things on the podcast. It'll be a lot of fun. But you can find all that, including post game content, Kenny Atkinson players, etc. Spence always is on top of it with those things, and we'll have some of that for you tomorrow, because no rest for the weary. Cavs are back at it on the second night of a back-to-back against the Heat at Rocket Arena tomorrow. I think we actually just got a question in here. Let's get this one, and then we'll get out of here, Spence.
Okay. Well, do you think that the national media getting a little bit more Cavs positive, that young players may get a big head, or is the culture just this strong? Great question. Great question,
I like this.
Taz. You know what? I think that they are not going to get a big head because Kenny Atkinson is the type of coach to where he won't let that happen. And Donovan Mitchell is the type of leader that won't let that happen, especially learning from past failures, learning from his time in Utah that he always talks about. If you look at his post-game videos on our YouTube channel, he is very steadfast on what he learned from Ricky Rubio and from being humbled by facing players on the Rockets that, really kind of tightened him up. I think that Darius Garland's going to learn from his postseason experience. I think that Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley are going to learn from their postseason experiences. You don't have to worry about a guy like Max Strus because he's been to the dance. DeAndre Hunter has had playoff experience. So I don't think that they're going to let it go to their head. I think they're confident, but it's in a good way. It's not in a cocky way, but it's in a way where they have self-belief. You can hear it in Evan Mobley's voice that he is speaking his confidence into existence on the court. And I think that's huge. Evan and DG are really the ones that you look at with that question, but I feel like Donovan's leadership is not going to allow that to happen for them.
I think we need to do this one because I like this question a lot. What do you guys think will be the Cavs' closing lineup during the playoffs. Listen, I think on most nights it's going to be pretty obvious. I think it's going to be the core four plus DeAndre Hunter, but I'm intrigued though, Spence, by these lineups that feature multiple wings. And so a lineup that's, Donovan, Darius, Mobley, Hunter, and maybe Dean Wade. We know he's the Celtics killer, right? Like in a series against the Celtics, if he's having a really good night, I don't know if I want to take him off the floor, and having two wings that can do a lot for you, that would be a fun way to close out a game.
Very matchup oriented, Robbie, and thanks for the question. Yeah, I think that you could also see one of those 3-guard lineups with Jerome, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell in there, maybe with Hunter and Mobley. You always have Isaac at the possibility if you need some defense. But yeah, I could see really any of them matchup wise, depending on who's available and what team they're playing, really. So the good thing is you have an embarrassment of riches, and you have different ways to play, different ways to attack, different ways to defend. If they need rebounds, you're obviously going to go bigger. If you need offense, you're probably going to go with Evan Mobley and 4 smalls. It's really dependent on the need of the game, but great question.
That was a fun one. I enjoyed doing that with you. I think this feels like a good place to sign off. We just closed 1,500 viewers tonight. We appreciate you guys stopping by for this post-game conversation. We will be back tomorrow night. So, if you want to stick around and sit where you are and just wait 24 hours, maybe a little over 24 hours from now, we'll do this all again. And we very much look forward to talking to you again soon. So we'll see what happens against the Heat tomorrow. In the meantime, for Spencer Davies, I'm Spencer German signing off tonight. Back at it tomorrow for the Cleveland Cavaliers on SI.